Today on Christ, Culture, and Coffee, we are going to be talking about the coronavirus and how Christians should be responding during this time of isolation. You don't want to miss it.
Hello, welcome to Christ, Culture, and Coffee. I'm Robbie Lashwell. I'm here with my co-host, Tyler Hurley.
Yes.
Whoa, social distancing. 6 feet.
I need to
What's
sanitize
happening?
this shoulder
Oh, yeah,
afterwards.
you better.
I'm going to make sure I don't touch my shoulder
If you
the
can
rest
find
of this
hand
interview.
sanitizer at any store, I guess. So, yeah,
Maybe.
We'll see about that. Well, hey, we're glad you're here with us today on this pandemic episode. We're going to be talking about the coronavirus, a lot of other things. But, yeah, it's been an interesting last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And we record a little bit ahead, so we haven't had time to talk about what's going on with the coronavirus.
So that's why the past couple episodes were different topics, just because that's what we had planned on doing. We didn't plan on there being a pandemic, you know.
No, it's hard to see that coming. That's for sure. But we definitely want to address it and talk a little bit about what a Christian response should be to these things and why God allows suffering like this to enter into our lives and what he's trying to do through it. So that's what we're going to be talking about. But today, we want to start with a coffee tip. We always start with a coffee tip.
We do.
This is your pandemic coffee tip. This actually happened to me a few days ago. So we were running low on groceries.
Sure.
And my wife does this thing called Click List, where you go online and you order stuff from the store, and then you can just go pick it up and they bring it out. Yeah, it's awesome. So anyways, as you can imagine, with everything going on, the waiting was like, you can usually do it the day before and then it's ready, but it's like a 3-4 day wait.
Okay, wow.
Which, okay, whatever, we were fine. But this was troubling. She orders everything, she picked it up, and she was like, okay, there's only about 50% of the stuff that we ordered, which I've heard that happens.
Okay.
But the worst part of it was coffee didn't make it. We had it to buy. They said, hey, sorry, we're out of coffee. And that's when I started to feel this thing. So she's like, can you go to the store, a different store, and pick up some of these things? So I went to the store, and I seriously headed for the coffee aisle because I'm like, I have got to find coffee. I was freaked out about it. So I was thinking through like what I might have to do in order to make it.
Panic buy tons of coffee.
Yeah. Well, and so anyways, long story short, I got to the aisle. There was tons of coffee at this store. I mean, tons of it, all different kinds. It was great. So I bought a bunch of it. Not a bunch of it. I bought enough for the week. But I was thinking about what would I have done if we couldn't have had any, you know? And of course, I can go without coffee. I don't have to have it every day. But this idea of reusing the same coffee grounds, again, not the best tasting cup of coffee, but it's good enough to do the job in hard times, right?
Sure.
In hard times, pandemic times.
Desperate times call for desperate measures.
Yeah, this is definitely a desperate measure. So I was thinking about if that would work, how it would work. You know, you can use a tea bag for a couple of different cups of tea. I thought, okay, coffee. So here's the tip for today. Yes, you can reuse coffee grounds, but you don't want to reuse them longer than the day of your first use. Because, and a lot of you will know this, some of you have left your coffee grounds in your coffee maker a little too long. And then you're like, I'm going to make a pot of coffee. And you go in there, you flip it open, and what do you see? Mold. It's the Black Plague. It's disgusting. Yeah. So wet coffee grounds are a great place for bacteria and mold to grow. So you do not want to reuse them the next day. You can reuse them, but it has to be day of.
Okay.
Again, not the greatest tasting cup of coffee, but if your coffee rations are low,
I wonder
you can
if this
do
works with like K-cups, if you can reuse them.
I think you can. Now, you can't reuse K-cups that are hot chocolate because like all the stuff actually comes out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know people who have reused K-cups. And it works. Okay. So anyways, so that's your tip for today. It's possible. It's not recommended if you don't have to, but sometimes you have to. If that's all you've got,
sometimes
you can do it. So there's your tip for today, but do not use it any longer than after 1 day. 1 day is the limit for wet coffee.
Well, I want to try reusing grounds in general, so hopefully it doesn't even come to that.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't come to that. But if it did, that's the tip for today. So yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so here we are. We're going to be talking about, so many different things. But I've just been a little saddened and shocked about people's response to this whole coronavirus thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people are panicking. Christians and non-Christian, like the whole world is panicking, whether it's in the stock market, right?
Yeah.
You're seeing that happening.
Economically, everything's falling apart.
Yeah. And then you got, like you said, the panic buying. People are, toilet paper is running out everywhere. And,
yeah. Who knew that was going to be the hot commodity,
that's
very interesting.
That's shocking. So, like things are just flying off the shelves. Like you said yourself, you're having a hard time even getting groceries. I didn't know how severe
with some of them.
Some of it's getting, but
here's the thing though, like, it's not as bad as it seems.
Sure.
If you go to the stores in the afternoon, certain things are gone.
Yeah.
But I was at the store the other morning because I was having coffee with a friend.
Sure.
And the grocery store was the only place that still had chairs outside we could sit at.
Okay.
So we bought our Starbucks and then we walked across to the grocery store. And so we're sitting there, and it was amazing because they're like, "Hey, we have a shipment of toilet paper. Just come into the back."
They announced it?
Yeah, they were announcing
Wow.
it. Hey guys, if anyone needs toilet paper, we have a shipment, and we're giving 1 pack away per household. To make sure everyone can get some. There was no rush. There was no panic. Everyone was doing fine.
That's good.
But then my friend's like, "Hey, actually, I'm going to go check and see if I can buy some eggs because my wife told me to get some eggs while I was out, and since we're already here." So we went in, and the entire grocery store was completely stocked.
Wow, no kidding.
All produce, all meat.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, in my head, I'm like, well, of course, like, they get new shipments, like, almost every night. Like,
Well, sure. That's what I
not that
thought,
big of
too.
a deal.
I'm like, So that's where I don't get some of it. I mean, I know that, like, stuff's running out, but they have more. It's not like the world's running out of this stuff.
Well, and it's funny, like, not funny, but, all restaurants are still operating.
Yeah,
pretty much.
they are.
Like, I can just order a pizza and get it delivered, and we can order Chipotle, and
Yeah.
there's still restaurants open. So, like, it's not even like we're not out of food.
No,
at
even
all.
sit-down restaurants are still doing takeout.
Yeah.
Every restaurant's still open.
So it's a weird situation. And so I was thinking through, like, what's going on and why is everyone freaking out?
Right.
And you hear all the different ideas and different sides of things. And unfortunately, the media sensationalizes so much stuff. All sides of it, conservative, liberal, whatever. They're selling you something because they're businesses, and they want to keep you hooked and watching 24 hours a day, right? When I was a kid, the news was like on 3 times a day. Not 24/7 all the time, vibrating your phone so it falls off the counter. Like, it wasn't like that. And what I've thought about a lot with this, Tyler, is how, that story, The Boy Who Cries Wolf?
Yeah.
You know that? So there's this kid, and he thinks it's a funny joke just to say, "Oh, there's a wolf," and people come and run. My wife says I say the word wolf funny.
Wolf?
Yeah, she says I say it like wolf, but it's wolf, like the L. I don't pronounce it very well or something.
I didn't catch that when you
Well,
said
that's good.
that.
Well, The Boy Who Cried Wolf. Wolf.
Yeah, I didn't hear it.
Yeah, I struggle a little with that.
Wolf.
Wolf. Yeah. but he says there's a wolf. Yeah. People come running. He cracks up because there's no wolf. Yeah, there's a wolf. People come running. He cracks up because there isn't. But then there really is, and everyone's like, we're not falling for it again. But it's a real emergency, right? I think because for the last 20, 25 years, the media has sensationalized news. Like, you notice everything's a big deal.
Yeah.
Breaking news. There's breaking news every day. And there's breaking news almost every hour.
It's because they're trying to compete with each other. That's how it is.
And they're a business.
Yep.
So if everything is breaking news, nothing's breaking news.
No.
Does that make sense? Yeah. And that's where we're at. It's like there's some people who are panicked and they're going and buying everything. Then there's other people going, I'm not taking it serious because they make a big deal out of everything. So nothing's a big deal. And it's a very interesting time to see different people's responses. And so I was thinking through all this, and it reminded me of a few things that I had read in this book by J.P. Moreland and Klaus Isler. If you haven't read this book, you need to get it. It's called The Lost Virtue of Happiness by J.P. Moreland and Klaus Isler. Great read, pretty easy read. It's not super deep and difficult. It is profound, though, and it's amazing. And one of the things listed in it was they talked about how our culture is filled with people they call the empty self. People are identified as empty selves, and they give 4 traits of what the empty self looks like. And so I thought it'd be cool for us to share with you what these traits are, and you'll recognize them, and you'll understand them, and you'll know people who exhibit them, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah, that's true.
But then in light of this happening in our culture, we can see why people are responding the ways they are to the coronavirus.
I think that's fair.
Right? So that's kind of the direction of the show that
exactly.
we want to go in today.
Yeah, because you can see clearly by some of these examples that we give, it's kind of humbling too, because you try to identify with where you fall into this.
Yeah.
Like when I was reading through it, I'm like, okay, am I acting fearful? I'm like, no, okay, so good. Like it kind of defines terms in a proper way to see where you fall on this whole response to the epidemic here.
And it helps us to think, what is a Christian response to this?
Yeah.
What are we to be? How does Jesus want us to live? And that's obviously ultimately the goal that we want to get to. So, well, let's go through this. What are these traits of what J.P. Moreland and Klaus Sisler call an empty self? There's 4 things. The first is that the empty self is what they call inordinately individualistic.
Yes.
Right? And our society is very individualistic, right? Everything's about you and your wants and your desires. I was even thinking there's this billboard for one of the casinos here in Arizona, and it says, "You do you." And I've seen it like 100 times.
Right.
It's everywhere.
I know where you're talking about. I can't remember what casino, but yeah.
But it's you do you. That's the message. You do you, because it's all about you.
Yeah, you're right. And that's different. Like what's interesting is you see in other societies, people are not as individualistic. Like, for instance, like in foreign countries like Japan, where it's a family-based society, and they talk, there's heavy emphasis on the family.
Yes.
Right? You don't want to do this because it might harm your family.
Yes.
Whereas here, we market towards the individual. It's a little bit more self-focused. So that's just as a culture, that's how we identify. That's why, like casino ads, it says you do you, right? Because that's what gets to people.
That wouldn't really fly in other cultures.
So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Because
but it sells here because it's all about me.
Yeah. Sometimes you doing you in Japan does not bring, that's not kind of what people are after. It's not, they're not after satisfying their individual needs. It's about satisfying their community, making people around them approve of them. And that's different. And then you find other cultures where it's completely different, where it's flipped around. So it's varying, but in the U.S. in particular, it's a very self-oriented kind of message in the culture.
Yeah, I'm my own individual. I don't think about my family. I don't think about my community. Definitely don't think about my actions in light of bringing shame on my family or bringing shame on my community, right? We think about, no, it's just me and whatever. Yeah, I'll live with the consequences. We say things like that, right?
I will live with the consequences.
We even, I was thinking about it, we even market to young people, especially, we warn them in individualistic ways, like with drugs, right? Sure. What are the top 10 reasons not to do drugs? Oh, it'll ruin your future. It'll ruin your finances. And it's all about you. It's not, it'll embarrass your family, right?
Yeah.
It'll make people look down on your parent. It's never about that kind of a thing. It's all about individualism. So that's the first trait of the empty self, is it is inordinately out of balance, individualistic. And that's one of the traits that a lot of people in our society are walking around with.
Yeah.
You want to go ahead and read the second one?
Yeah, absolutely. So the next one is the empty self is infantile. Right? Adolescent personality traits are staying with people longer today than in earlier generations.
Yeah, that's very true.
And, I think what's interesting about this, it's true. You can see there's been this cultural shift. And I mean, I think part of it is due to, obviously, an advancement in technology, I'm sure, that has something to play with it. I mean, back in the day, you didn't have instant gratification in your pocket, right?
Sure.
Where it's just a phone that could pull up literally everything.
Yeah, sure.
That's why you said, back in the day, even with news, you couldn't get the news right at your fingertips that quickly.
Yep.
Not like we do today. And so, I think just over time, there's kind of this need of instant gratification, comfort, and seeking.
That's like an infantile, immature thing.
It is, exactly. And that's why the empty self is infantile. That's why we say that.
Yeah, because they are I need to gratify myself instantly, quickly. I want what I want right now, on demand, right?
Of course. And we say infantile with that too, because you think of a baby crying for its bottle, right? And then usually that's the only way that it can get what it wants. Is ask cry. So baby cries, gets the bottle, that's kind of the mentality that you go with here.
When you're like that, you're controlled by your appetites.
Yes.
Whether it's food, whether it's sex, whether it's an appetite for entertainment, experience, whatever, adrenaline, you're controlled by that. And really what the infantile self is lacking is self-control.
Yes, that's correct. And then to top that off too, the ultimate evil is dissatisfaction and boredom. Like that's
Yes.
the idea with them. It's not having pleasure. It's pain, endurance, and hard work. That is the ultimate evil in that
Yeah.
idea. It is. It
No,
is.
it is.
And that's the thing. And you think about it, and obviously, no one really, like, I don't know too many people that genuinely say, I enjoy pain, endurance, and hard work.
I don't know if enjoyment
In
is
the
an
moment.
aspect of
Yeah,
it,
of course.
sure.
You know what I mean? But the idea that we're getting at here is we're not saying that. It's saying that, like, you fear that almost. That's kind of the idea of this this
You
empty
avoid
self.
it.
You avoid it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because this is considered evil. Boredom.
Why would I work hard at
endurance.
school if I can just go on Spark Notes and I can get all the cheating answers?
Sure, yes,
Why would I work hard at
exactly.
this if I can just? So it's I'm looking for the loophole. I'm looking for the easy way out.
Yes, something
because
that-
endurance and hard work is
Right.
horrible.
Something that's instant gratification, something that's immediate that you can get access to.
Yep.
That's the
and we have a
idea.
lot of people living that way. They're
Yes.
individualistic and they're infantile. You
Mm-hmm.
know, even thinking about it, it's really interesting, Tyler. I heard John Stone Street say this, or I read it from him somewhere. But he was talking about how, you know, in the 80s, when they were making movies, the stupid, immature person in the movies were teenagers because they're literally adolescents.
Yeah,
Right?
that's right.
And so you had all of these teen movies about coming of age and growing up and making mistakes. And
Yeah.
then you get into the 90s, and the adolescent is no longer the teenager. It is the 20-year-old adult. Think about it. Adam Sandler,
Yeah.
right? Jim Carrey, right? Now the
Yeah, that was
idiot-
the movie.
Yeah, the
image right
adolescent isn't a teenager anymore. It's a 20-something. Then you get into the 2000s, and who's the adolescents? Full blown like 30, 40-year-olds, like
Will Ferrell.
right?
I didn't
Isn't
think
that
of that. You're
interesting?
absolutely right. Yeah.
So even
And it's kind of that age range. So it kind of
Yeah.
just progressed.
there's a reflection in entertainment
Sure.
showing us kind of what people are seeking, because the goal of our culture, sadly, is to remain an adolescent. We don't have young people desiring to become adults. We have adults trying to be 16. Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting. Well, I'm seeing too, like, in some ways, actually, even right now, it almost seems like that's starting over. And I'm wondering if, too, it's just another generation. But I'm thinking about, like, there's a lot of films out there that are focused, too, on, like, younger kids. Like,
Yeah.
or like what's been big right now is Stranger Things, right?
Sure.
Sure, it's been going for a little while now, a couple of years. But, like,
Yeah.
stuff like that,
like a throwback kind of thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's like redirecting back into younger generation. And then, so it's kind of interesting to see the cultural shift and
Yep.
like just the way that people are thinking.
It really is. And the sad thing with the infantile empty self is that virtue, right? And cultivating good character isn't even on the radar.
Yeah.
And that's really sad. So the goal, like you said, is to have a pleasurable life, a happy life,
Yes.
not to have a good life.
Yes. And in this mentality, amusement is the greatest good.
Yes.
Out of
Oh,
that.
absolutely, absolutely. So the empty self is individually, inordinately individualistic, infantile, and then the third trait is they're narcissistic. They're completely preoccupied with their self-interest, their personal fulfillment. And we actually have seen this creep into the Christian community in the church, right?
Yeah,
When
yeah.
church becomes about my musical style preference, when it becomes about, I like these kinds of chairs, I like this sort of carpet, I like this, and you hear people say things about, oh, worship was really good today. And what that means is I felt a certain way about it.
No, I'm glad you brought this up, Robbie, too, and focusing on the Christian perspective in church. I've literally had someone come to me before and say, I really enjoyed church today. And I asked them, well, why'd you enjoy it so much? And then they said, because the worship made me feel good.
Yeah. And it's not bad.
No. But and let me clarify. What they meant by that was they meant I think that I had a good feeling when I was experiencing it, but then they said they basically were saying that, like, once the worship was done, though, I was kind of tuned out, and like
Sure.
I wasn't, and it was basically like they were thinking solely on, like, okay, how am I consuming something out of this? It's like that consumerism kind of mindset.
Exactly.
And that's why I'm getting
consumerism
at here.
is narcissistic, because
Yes,
it's like, I'm going to go
exactly.
get what I want right now because it's about me.
Yes,
I mean,
correct.
think
And
about
then
it.
you
Like,
check out at that point.
Yeah, well, even the idea, the customer's always right.
Yeah.
That's narcissistic.
I like that.
It's
That's
right. It
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
It's narcissistic, and so
It's true.
It's interesting in our culture because we see this in church. We also see it in the education system. And this is just sad, but people go to college nowadays not to learn.
Yeah, you're
Like
right.
I never hear somebody say, "I'm so excited about going to school because I will get educated on this subject. I love history. I love theology. I love engineering." Nobody goes to school for the pleasure of learning. People go to school to get a good career.
Yeah. I mean, Arizona State University is the #1 party school in the nation. It's labeled as that because people go there and they just party and have a good time. They don't. Like a lot. I'm not saying all do, but obviously,
no, but that's an aspect of it.
Yeah,
but
it is.
even the education part of it though is not nobody, but a lot of people are going. This is the path. I go to college so I get a piece of paper so I can get a higher paying job. Not there's virtue in investing in knowledge. There's virtue in learning. That doesn't exist.
Right, of course.
I'm just getting a good job because I want to make more money so I can be more narcissistic.
Yeah, right. And now we keep backpedaling too, but this obviously isn't a blanket statement over everybody.
No,
who
but you
is
do
doing
see
this.
this a
But
lot.
you do. It's something that's common. I think it's really sad because you're seeing it's becoming more of a trend too. It's kind of
a lot of people think this is what life's about. It's about me, and it's about instant gratification, and I'm an individual, right?
I mean, that mentality has always really been there in culture. But the thing is, you can just see it populating, especially in the time of the virus right now.
Yeah.
And then you're seeing some
you're
people
seeing
that come
that. Yeah, you're seeing the aspects.
like that. Yeah,
of
that's what I mean. The
outplaying
aspects
of it.
coming out. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and the fourth point again. So it's inordinately individualistic. The empty self is infantile. The empty self is narcissistic, and then the last one is that the empty self is passive. And this one's really interesting. Instead of having a hero be your role model, the empty self's role model is the couch potato.
Yeah.
Right? And this is just true. You think about it. Why do people go to work? So they can pay their Netflix subscription and go home and binge watch all night, or go home and play video games all night and then show up to work trashed because I don't really want to cultivate virtue of having a good work ethic or giving my best for my community or my boss, because it's not about them, it's just about me. Right? So I go home and I binge watch or I binge play, I stay up all night and I trash myself so that I'm not ready to do my job, but it doesn't matter. The only reason I'm doing my job is so I can go home and binge whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Binge used to be a bad term, Tyler. I don't know if you know that. When I was a kid, it was a negative term.
I hate using that word. I've never referred to like something. I say splurge sometimes. I'll say that because you're right. Like binge kind of associates a lot of bad ideas in my mind.
It means you're doing too much of something.
Yeah. It does. Yeah. It does. And like that's the thing. I mean, I know like everybody splurges on stuff. I say splurge because I hate that word because the thing is like a binge, like the idea of binging something, it means that like you said, you're getting too much of it. You're overindulging yourself in it. And that's something that you should really try to avoid from. And that was the idea.
A lifestyle of binge is idolatry.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
It is.
A lifestyle of binging is not moderation.
Yeah.
And scripture teaches moderation, but this isn't. But the empty self is passive and they want to consume and this is what's really sad about it is the passivity becomes they observe or they consume the aspects of life they're supposed to engage in through other people doing it. They live vicariously through other people. Right, so the elementary school teacher parents for me and teaches my kid about sex and about life, and the pastor does the Bible reading for me and spoon feeds me my spirituality, and my favorite team wins for me. Right, they fight for me, and I just sit on the couch eating potato chips. Right, everybody else does life for me, and I observe it because I'm passive.
Yeah.
And it's sad because as I'm saying this, I know our viewers and our listeners, you know people like this. And you've seen this in varying degrees. But sadly, this is what life is becoming. People are entertaining themselves to death. And they think that life is about instant gratification and them, not about community, not about contributing. And sadly, because we have a culture filled with a lot of people that are empty selves, we've seen some very negative responses to the coronavirus.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we want to build up to with all of this. So the question would become, again, empty self, pretty negative.
Yeah, sure. Right.
I
would say so.
I never want to be characterized as that. I don't want to live like that at all, right?
Yeah.
But what does Jesus say we're supposed to live for? How does he say what's the greatest thing we can do and be? Right? Yeah. And luckily we have what he says about this. Amazingly, right?
I mean, we do?
Yeah, we do, Tyler.
No kidding. I had no idea.
We really do. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So he says this in a couple of different places, actually. It's called the greatest commandment.
Wow.
I know, it's pretty amazing. The greatest commandment. So you want to go ahead and read that?
Yeah,
so this version, this is from Matthew 22, 36 through 40, but this is the greatest commandment. And if you have time, I know you have time because you're just quarantining in your house.
He got you there.
I did get you. So read through Matthew 22. It's one of my favorite chapters in the whole Bible. It's great. Jesus is just outsmarting every opponent that comes to him.
Yeah.
So read through it. But yeah, you want to go ahead and read that passage
Yeah,
for us?
of course. So again, this is 22 verses 36 through 40. It says, "Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law?" And he said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend the whole law and the prophets."
This is awesome.
Yeah.
Greatest commandment. Love God, heart, soul, strength, mind.
Yeah, and we'll see.
Love your neighbor.
This is great because what they're coming to him with this question, they're asking him like, "Hey, what is the greatest commandment?" And by answering that, Jesus gives him something that applies to the whole law.
Yes.
Like
yeah,
literally,
the
he's
whole
just saying,
Old Testament
he's
hangs
just saying,
on two
yeah,
things.
If you like it said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and then love your neighbor as yourself. Mm-hmm. Then everything else in Scripture follows along.
Yeah, think about the 10 Commandments, how they fit into that.
I think, yeah,
if you
that's
love
a good way
God
to do it.
with everything you have,
Mm-hmm.
you won't commit idolatry.
Yeah.
If you love your neighbor as yourself, you won't have sex with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
If you love your neighbor as yourself, you won't lie to him and bear false testimony. Yeah. If you love your neighbor as yourself, you won't steal his stuff.
Right. It all applies.
Yeah, it all applies.
And that's a great thing. And so, again, Jesus, he knew what he was talking about.
He's a pretty smart guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very smart. Yeah,
right?
when the lawyers and the Pharisees came and asked him this. But this is what we're to live. This is who we're to be when there's a pandemic and when there's not a pandemic, right? When there's coronavirus, when there's not. This is our goal. Now think about what's different about this versus the empty self. This is you love your neighbor as much as you love yourself, meaning not narcissism, not individualistic, right? Not passive, because love is active.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think it's very interesting. We're supposed to love God with everything we have and love our neighbors as ourselves. That's what Christians are supposed to do. But we've seen, Tyler, with this this panic that's gone around our country the past few weeks, people aren't responding like that.
No.
Right? Yeah, some are, and there's some cool stories, and we want to share some of that.
Yeah, right.
But a lot of people are falling into two different categories. So we wanted to talk about the two categories we see happening a lot in response to the pandemic because people are empty selves. But then the third response of how we as Christians need to be during this time. Right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we want to get into.
I think that's great. And so, like we were saying, obviously, the main thing that we're seeing a lot of happening is panic buying and hoarding.
Yeah, and that's what we call. So the first type of person we want to identify is what we're calling the panic hoarder.
The panicked hoarder, yes.
They're panicked. They're freaking out. I got to buy 15 times as much toilet paper as possible.
Yes.
Right? I got to get all the meat at the supermarket. I've got to get everything. I've got a stockpile. Right?
Yeah. And then what's crazy about this is what you're seeing happening is the people who were panic buying in the early stages created more panic buyers because everybody's seeing everything flying off the shelf. Yep. So then you see it and you're like, shoot, I need to get that. And then quickly buy it. And then it just gets into this, it builds fear. Because what happens is when you're fearful and you go and panic buy, you're encouraging the panic buying and the fear that's occurring within the rest of the country.
It's a false sense of security is what it is. I was talking with my mom, and she was telling me that at Home Depot, this one store, they completely sold out of all their deep freezers. Because think about this. People are
Were
going
they
to the
freezing
next
meat? Was that it?
Yeah, people are going to the next level. Instead of like my one refrigerator
gosh.
that I use all the time isn't enough anymore. Now I've got to buy, and there's nothing wrong with having a freezer in your garage. I know a lot of people who do, but the fact that people were so panicked, they went to buy more containers to hoard more food.
Well, that brings me to another point. So my father-in-law, he works in the plumbing industry, and he said that that they've sold out completely of bidets. and for those of you who don't know what a bidet is, it's a spout that shoots up water out of the toilet, so you don't have to use toilet paper.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So yeah, they've sold completely out of those.
Wow.
And like the cheapest ones that they have are $500 for sale.
So people are spending a lot of money because they're panicked.
Yeah, and like that's crazy. And so it's you see like people are trying panic buying to such extremes that they're looking to other methods.
Yeah. Well, and
this
is the point with the panic hoarder response to the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Is that it's really unveiling or exposing the empty self that this person is, and this is what we mean by it. When you are so panicked by this that you go out and you're hoarding toilet paper or food or bidets or whatever, right? This is an infantile response.
Yeah,
because I have to make sure I feel comforted, and I, as an individual narcissist, have all the stuff I want to have, Tyler, because God forbid I don't have chicken one day. Right? I mean, isn't that the idea? God forbid I run out of toilet paper. I mean, think about this. Toilet paper is not a necessity.
No.
Do you know a lot of people lived without it for most of human existence?
Yeah.
It's true. I've been camping, and this maybe is too much information, right? TMI, is that what you kids say these days? Just kidding.
We kids.
Yeah, whatever.
I don't associate myself with these kids that use TMI.
But I've been camping, and you can go to the bathroom, and you can use other things other than toilet paper. We all have showers at our house. I mean, that's gross, right? But it's fascinating to me that toilet paper, it's a luxury.
Yeah, it is.
It's not a necessity. Meat is a luxury. When I was in Rwanda last year, they only eat meat one day a week at most.
Well, it's just that people are so accustomed to it that they've mistaken the luxury for a necessity.
Yes, and that's a sign of living in an affluent culture.
Yeah.
Right? A decadent culture where we think we need things and we have no concept of this. And but even beyond the stupidity of that is the cruelty of I don't care about my neighbor enough not to buy all the stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
That happens.
That's scary to me. I don't care about other people enough. I'm going to hoard it and make sure I'm fine because I can't go without. Screw the rest of everybody.
Yeah.
That's just that is not what we're supposed to do as Christians, especially. But as human beings, we're not supposed to hoard. We're supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, what's great though is you see there are some positive stories, thankfully, that have been coming out in this. I personally have heard of someone who bought a stockpile, like they hoarded tons of toilet paper when they saw that it was flying out the shelves. They went around and they bought as much as they could. Except instead of hoarding it and keeping it all to themselves, they went and they were giving it out to friends and family.
That's
who
awesome.
They found out who they would say, hey, look, reach out to me if you're out of toilet paper because I bought a ton to give away. They weren't selling it. They bought it knowing it was flying off the shelves, so that way they can meet a need.
That's cool, and that is the rare exception.
It is. It is.
Now, and there's good things we can do during these times, but the reason stores are empty of toilet paper isn't because there's good Samaritans going around buying it to give away.
That's
like
not
Santa
happening.
Claus, right?
Yeah.
And I like hearing cool stories like that. And there's a lot of people doing a lot of good because that's loving your neighbor as yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But by and large, the stores are empty because people aren't concerned with their neighbor. They've turned into toilet paper mercenaries. Right? I mean, that's funny. That's what's going on.
Yeah,
a non-essential luxury mercenary. It's just crazy to me. And even I've heard stories about people saying and doing horrible things to each other at stores because they're vying for this thing. And I don't know if people have really run out.
I don't think so, man.
You know?
No, stores are still getting stocked. Like you said it yourself.
Yeah. I was at the store the other day and they were announcing, hey, we've got more toilet paper in stock. Come and get some. And
Yeah.
anyways, the panicked hoarder is not the response that we want to have as Christians, because we don't want to be infantile. We don't want to be so individualistic and narcissistic that we only think about ourselves. We want to think about and love our neighbor.
Yes, that is correct.
Now, the second type of person, this is kind of an interesting one. We're calling the defiant ignorer, right?
Yeah,
and if I'm honest, this is more of the struggle I have. This would be the person that I'd want to be more of. It's more natural for me to fall into this category.
I would say that's fair.
Yeah. Do you want to explain?
I do. I mean, because I think I do too.
Yeah.
When I was reading this is something that seems. Yeah.
You want to kind of explain who the defiant ignorer is?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically the idea here is to love your neighbor means to sacrifice your normal routines, wants, and desires, and to possibly help not spread the virus to someone else. Meaning, you're thinking, I'd have to sacrifice like my routine and what I'm doing in order to prevent other people from dealing with this, or my rights are being infringed on by having to comply with these mandates,
these quarantines, like staying home laws, and things like that,
stuff like that. And so basically, you might be low risk, right, to the virus of getting it, but the idea here is it's not only about you, which is the individualistic, the narcissistic idea. The idea is like you need to cut yourself off so that way you are guarding and protecting those who are at risk.
And that's where the defiant ignorer is. We've seen a lot of these people where they're like, I don't care what people say. I don't think it's really a threat. I don't believe the media because they're crying wolf.
I did that.
Going out.
I did that for the first couple weeks
but
when it was coming out, because I thought, I mean, like I'm looking at this and I've been hearing stuff about coronavirus happening since like back in and it was like beginning of January, I think, when everything started coming out. But then to me, I was making jokes about it like it was another Ebola. Because the thing is, yes, Ebola was far deadlier.
Yep.
But it was not nearly as contagious.
No.
People were panicking.
Yep.
And then not after long, when it was spreading, it died off and people stopped talking about it.
Yeah. Well, and that's happened with a lot of different viruses.
Yeah, not just that. I mean, it happened with swine flu. It happened with, and I'm talking about more recent things, of course. And now people, were they deadly diseases? Yeah. But I mean, we didn't respond in such a way that we are with this. And so my initial reaction, I was following this a bit because I
want to just ignore it. I don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out. You still see, I mean, it's pretty crazy. Like California is like on lockdown. Right?
I know. I have a strong feeling Arizona could happen.
But there's tons of people at the beach.
I know.
They're not on lockdown. Nobody's listening. Nobody's doing it. Not nobody. There's the people who've hoarded the toilet paper and they have sealed their doors shut with duct tape.
People who have like in those movies where they have like a bunker, like a quarantine zone or something like. Like that's the thing. You have some people that are doing that.
But then you have the panicked hoarder.
Yeah.
But then you have the defiant ignorer.
Yes.
Who's going to the beach and I'm going to live my life. And it is sad because basically what they're saying is, I don't think it's a real risk. I'm not a high risk because I'm not, 60 or older. Therefore, I don't care about sacrificing my normal life, my routine, the things I want to go do in order to love maybe my high risk neighbor.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that's what's going on? Now, again, there's all this speculation of, well, it's not as crazy as people say, this and that. Regardless, can we love our neighbor enough to sacrifice normal life for a time in order to show them that, hey, I actually do care about you. And if there is even the slightest chance of harming you, I'm okay with sacrificing some things in order not to harm you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But we see this. We see the ignorer. We see the hoarder. And both of them are unloving to their neighbor, I think. Now, there's nothing wrong with being prudent and being smart and making sure you have food and water. Of course, like you need to provide for your family. But this is a different level, man.
Yes.
When stores that are always stocked are running out, it's not because we've had a new need for toilet paper. People are stocking up like crazy. Have you heard about like Costco and these other stores? They put out these statements where we're not going to refund you can't return toilet paper to us. You can't return paper products to us.
I did see that, because what's happening is you're going to see it's going to happen where like all the panic buying is going to slow down, and then stores are going to be stocked up.
Yep.
But all the people who are panic buying and who hoarded all of these things are still going to have an oversupply that they don't need.
Yeah.
And then they went and they spent all their money on this.
Yeah.
And they don't need
and they're
it.
Gonna, oh man,
and then they're going to want to take it back. Yep. But then the store's like, nope.
And what this really is there's a group of people who are so infantile that they're overreacting to make sure they're comforted and soothed.
Yeah, right.
And have instant gratification for every meat and every type of paper product they want in their house.
Yeah.
Then there's the defiant ignorer who's underreacting.
Yeah.
Right? So there's the overreacting hoarder, the underreacting ignorer, and what they're doing with this is they're finding a sense of self-control, not self-control, but they're finding a sense of soothing and comfort by ignoring what's happening, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And we don't want to be either of those, because both of those aren't loving your neighbor. And Jesus said the greatest thing we can do is love God with everything we've got and love our neighbor as much as we love ourselves.
Yeah, that's
so,
absolutely right.
As disciples of Jesus, right, that's the third category, I think. We don't want to be the panicked hoarder. We don't want to be the defiant ignorer. We want to be disciples of Jesus. And what he calls us to is self-sacrifice.
Yeah, right.
He says to follow him. And he says things like, I didn't come to be served, but to serve, and to give my life as a ransom for many. And he tells us to live like that. And so how do we, during a pandemic, exemplify this? Right? What does that look like, Tyler? Like, what do you think? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, well, for me, probably not panic buying, probably just buying what I need. And then maybe calling up on other friends, which I have actually done. That was one thing I did in particular. I know of several young couples that are my age who I knew from school. I've been contacting them in the past week because I want to make sure. I'm like, okay, you guys are kind of young, married, just like I am, and I know that you're going to have, like, you're alone. So like one of the couples I know is by themselves in this state. So I reached out to them in particular. I'm like, do you need anything?
Yeah.
Like, is there, are you, like, do you have enough toilet paper? Do you have food? Do you have groceries? Like everything that you need, like no one's sick, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think that goes a long way. Like, cause the thing is, you're not like going out and throwing on, like, giving up a ton of money or anything.
Sure.
It just by just calling someone and checking on them and making sure that they're okay, making sure they're healthy, that their needs are being met, and that you just let them know that you're there. Not only that, during like a time of self-isolation with everybody, people are probably getting pretty lonely right now.
Yeah, I bet people are going stir crazy.
Right now, right? And so I think it would go a long way if maybe even not a phone call, if a FaceTime or a Skype call, because we have that ability now to have video chats. So, I mean, like, maybe we should be utilizing that during this time. So that way we aren't actually isolating ourselves.
I agree. Or just because you can't go hang out at a coffee shop or go to a restaurant or go to the movie or whatever, doesn't mean you can't even call up a friend and say, hey, you want to meet and go on a walk and talk, right?
Social distancing does not mean social isolation.
No. And if you know your friend or you know your family member and they're healthy and they're staying out of contact with people, why can't you go outside and walk together?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I heard that the danger is when you're 15 minutes or more with somebody who's infected talking, because it has to be droplets, right? So we can still reach out and love people as we would love ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's what Jesus calls us to do. And I think that our culture, the church really has an awesome opportunity to show people what it looks like to follow Jesus. Not to hoard, not to ignore, but to care about people enough to sacrifice our comforts or to sacrifice even our going out, right? Like I'm an extrovert. I want to go out. I want to hang out with people. I want to, like, it's driving me nuts to be at home so much. Yeah. But can I sacrifice that want in order to love somebody and not infect them? Yeah, I can, I can. And we should, because that's the God we serve. The other thing that I think is interesting about this is that Christianity has a really robust theology of suffering and of going through tough times. And again, I don't think what we're going through right now is the toughest thing Christians have ever gone through. We're not getting thrown in the arena and shredded by lions. We're not being burned at the stake. There's not things like that. But this is tough. and there's sacrifice and there's worry that comes along with it and all these things. But one of the things that really makes me upset is thinking about wasting suffering, right? Because God talks so much about suffering and what we're to do with suffering and that it's going to happen. And when it does happen, here's what you should do with it. And I think that a lot of people are just trying to soothe themselves, self-medicate to get through the time so life can get back to normal and they can forget about this.
Yeah.
Versus, no, what is God trying to do in me through the suffering? Right?
Yeah.
I've wasted a lot of suffering in my life. I've gone through hard things, and I thought the goal is to get through it, but everyone gets through it because time passes. I don't know if the goal is just to get through it. I think that the goal is to let God use it to mature us. Make sense?
Yeah, I think that's good. Because the thing is like we need to be responding well, and I think that that's a good way to respond is to use this in the best way possible, and that's by taking the time to pray and to meditate on how God wants to change us during this time in this process. Yeah.
Well, and one of my favorite verses to think about suffering is one of my favorite passages, James 1:2-4. Yeah. This is crazy because this is how he starts off his letter.
Yeah.
Right. He says, "Hey, James," and he introduces himself, and then verse 2. He says, "Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials," which would be a pandemic.
Yeah, I would say so.
Right? So he's like, whatever hardship, right? Anything, various trials. And then verse 3, "Knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." Okay, so trials come, and we should consider it joy. So our attitude towards the pandemic should be joy. We need to consider this a joyful time, which sounds so crazy to the hoarder, and it sounds so crazy to the ignorer.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. But we're to consider it joy. That's our posture towards the suffering. That's our attitude towards it. But why? And he says, because you know that this testing of your faith, the trial is a testing type thing. This pandemic, this stay in your house, this you might not have all the comforts you want, right? This you might get sick with the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Right?
That's possible.
All of those things can produce endurance. When your faith is tested, it can produce endurance, and endurance can have its perfect result. And I love that word perfect there because it's the word teleos, and it means mature, fully developed. So not like you're perfect and sinless.
Sure.
But it means growing to be what you're supposed to be.
Yes, yes.
And that's what can be produced through these times. Suffering is a tool that God uses to cultivate us in virtue and in character. Yeah,
and how that works is obviously like when you're going through hard times and then you remain faithful through it and God comes through for you on the other end of this and something good comes out of this, it increases our faith further in the next time that we go through something.
Oh, absolutely. We trust God even more because we know he was faithful then with the pandemic in 2020. Now it's 2035 and I'm going through this and he's going to be faithful to me.
Yeah.
He's going to be with me through it. Maybe not I'm going to have all the results I want, right? But he's going to be with me through it because he's faithful. And I think that a lot of Christians don't suffer well. They get through it because time passes, but they do it horribly by hoarding or by ignoring, right? And that's what I've been thinking about in my life. Like, I don't want to waste this pandemic. I don't want to waste the potential suffering that comes with this to be self-seeking, narcissistic, and infantile. I want to allow Jesus to use this to cultivate and mature me in who I'm meant to be. Because virtue is important to Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
Character is important to Jesus.
Yeah, right.
All of those things are a big deal to him. And so we can't waste opportunities to suffer well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It just, and then something else in mind too, something contrast too from the rest of the world, right? We find this in scripture too, with the golden rule, right? Do unto others what you would have them do unto you.
Yeah.
But the idea... It's interesting. Something that I came to find and discovered not long ago. I was in a world religions class, and we were discussing Buddhism. Okay. And Buddhist teaches a separate idea of the golden rule. It's kind of an inverse golden rule. It is do not unto others which you would not want them to do unto you.
Okay. So that's just avoiding.
Yeah, but think about it. Think about the contrast in Christianity versus that message, right? It's do, right?
Be active.
It's be active into helping and serving others to do what you would want them to do unto you. The other idea, and then I think this is kind of going in the world too, it's like secular idea of the golden rule is to be abstaining from like just withdraw, so that way you aren't causing harm unto people what they don't want.
Yeah, I didn't steal the toilet paper, but I didn't give them extra.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
and so
that's the difference.
That's what I think we should be about. We should be about doing, right? We should go out and actually do something with this, because that's something that we're about here in Christ Culture and Coffee. It's about, because the whole goal of this podcast, like we talk about all the time, is to equip Christians to be able to defend their faith and be confident in your faith. But with that, it's also to go out and share your faith and to be a witness for the Lord. That's something that we're about on this podcast. And by being a good witness and an ambassador for Christ, we should be doing something about it, right? Like following along with the biblical idea of the golden rule, going out and doing unto someone you would want them to do to you if you were in a crisis.
Loving your neighbor in the way you'd want to be loved.
Yes, exactly.
Loving them as you love yourself. That's the key. And we learn and grow much more through pain than we do through easy times.
Yes.
Suffering produces growth. When things are normal and easy, does that grow you?
No.
I mean, even physically, there's pain.
I mean,
teething, there's pain. All these things. That's how it works.
Yeah.
When there's suffering, it is the catalyst for growth and maturity. When there's ease and comfort, the things that the empty self seeking. There's not a lot of growth.
It's with everything in life, like not just spiritually, it's that way, but like look at athletes, for example, or bodybuilders, right?
Yeah,
there's a lot of discipline and pain,
and
endurance and like hard times that you have to get through in order to get your results.
You're literally ripping your muscle in order for it to grow back and build new muscle.
And that's the thing.
Yeah,
like we apply that to every other area of life. And that's how it should be spiritually. We should be, because spiritually we need to go through discipline and a little bit of pain and some suffering in order to grow.
And we can consider it joy because we know that God is growing us through it.
Yeah.
So instead of being an empty self and trying to avoid all of suffering, instead of being an empty self and trying to stay away from any type of pain, right?
Yeah.
Which is what the hoarder's doing because they're trying to stockpile so they don't have to go through pain. And it's what the ignorer's doing because they're just avoiding it. We can suffer well. We can. It sounds so crazy to the world, but it's true. As Christians, we can invite suffering because we know it produces good in us. The world's trying to avoid suffering and pain. Because we have a Savior who conquered sin, Satan, and death, we can invite suffering because we know it's chiseling away our old self. And so if you're a listener or you're a viewer out there watching on YouTube, I really do want to challenge you during this time. I know I've been watching a lot of churches and pastors there's a lot of comfort coming out. Hey, God's comforting, and He is a comforter. But I want to challenge you, don't waste this time of suffering. And if you're a hoarder, panicked Christian, stop. And if you are an ignoring, defiant Christian, stop. Because we need to be self-sacrificial. Maybe this suffering is exposing that you have these issues in your life. Maybe it's exposing these empty self-traits that were creeping in. Thank God that you can see it. Thank God that you felt the panic and now you're faced with what are you going to do about this? Who are you going to turn to? Are you going to turn to consumerism and self-soothe? Or are you just going to bury your head in the sand and try to ignore? Or are you going to turn to Jesus and face the suffering head on, knowing that He can produce something good from it? That's what we want to be about as Christians. We don't have to be afraid of it. We don't have to like it.
Yeah, right.
But it really can grow us. It's an awesome thing that God can do in and through us. So I'd encourage you, Tyler. I'd encourage me. I'd encourage our listeners, please don't waste your suffering. Don't waste this hard time. Let God use it to bring you to maturity and to fully develop you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for being with us today on Christ Culture and Coffee. We do hope this was encouraging, challenging, and enlightening, and interesting, and anything else we can add to.
Right. And then with that, again, this is Christ culture in coffee. And the reason we have that in our title too is we're about the culture. We're about things that are happening right now. And we want to provide responses whenever something big is happening. And right now, this is huge. This is bigger than anything I've seen in my lifetime that I can remember. I mean, I was pretty young when 9/11 happened, but I mean, this is like pretty crazy, like with the cultural response. And so we just wanted to give a response. We hope that this was encouraging and challenging, as Robbie said here. And we just hope that you spend a little time reaching out and helping and loving your neighbors this week.
Yep, that's the goal. Go out, love people, show them that there's a way where you don't have to be panicked and you don't have to ignore. You can suffer well and be self-sacrificial because that's who Jesus is.
Yeah.
So go out and do that this week. Thanks so much for being with us today on Christ Culture and Coffee. We'll see you guys next week.